Welcome to the Derek Loudermilk Show. This is episode 350 with Robert Michael. Robert Michael is a legal educator and human rights advocate. He's an expert at establishing and defending people's freedom legally. So you're going to learn a ton in this episode about what are your rights as a free man or woman, and what are privileges. And you're going to learn all kinds of nuances of the legal system, about how the government makes money from you, the entities and trusts that it creates, that have the same name as you when you're born. A separate entity, known sometimes as your straw man, is created. That's not you, but it's an entity that has the same name as you, and how that works with taxes and in terms of your citizenship and what types of freedoms you have versus this entity. And this episode is going to take us through the history of the United States, Constitution, terminology, the use of words. We're going to learn about what is consent. We're going to learn about binding contracts and when you should be giving your information. How you should be signing your signature so that you can maintain your rights. We're going to learn about taxation and how it could be voluntary. This episode is meant to be a starting point for anyone who wants to make sure they have rock solid freedom in this ever-changing world. So this information is backed up by decades of legal research that many judges and lawyers and police officers don't know about. So this is where you get a chance to start learning about this stuff and hopefully protect your freedoms so that you feel peaceful and you can go out and do your work in the world. So without further ado, here is the amazing Robert Michael. Robert Michael, welcome to the show.
Hello, good morning. Glad to be here.
Good morning. And I thought we'd start because I encountered you and your work through, as this happens sometimes, a series of coincidences. And I was investigating words and language in a physics sense, in terms of vibration and how they create, when you speak a word, it creates a reality of that word coming into existence. And I followed this trail to magic and magical spells and words like that. And I was reading this book that said, well, did you know that black magic has been used in the legal system for a long time with these words? And I was like, what? That's a weird thing to say. But I came across this concept of the straw man, of an entity that has the same name as you, but isn't you. And then eventually I came to you and your work. And so I thought maybe we could start with you just commenting on, because you're well-versed in law and legal terminology and words and all these things. Could you just talk a little bit about how words are used and the power of words and why they're important to you and to our freedom?
Well, I think you did a great job, man. Actually explaining it right there is that they are spells and the words are super important. From my understanding, going back to Babylon, right? Babel, that's why they call it Babel. Oh, you're just babbling, because they took language and they mixed it all up and they did all these things with it so that we would be confused. But, the vibration of the sound is everything. So when I started studying law to figure this whole thing out in history, my biggest thing was I was seeing words that I had heard throughout my lifetime and kind of had an understanding of what they were. But then I was like, well, what's the legal meaning, right? So if we have a language that we don't understand, we have a dictionary for it, right? So that's why I try to tell people, there's three English languages. There's slang, there's proper English, and there's legal English. And we could even venture to say, then there's medical English, then there's banking English, right? Because all of these languages have a dictionary. So language is so extremely important. And yes, the words that we speak are the spells that we're putting out there. You know, if we want to manifest something in a certain light, we want to use certain words to draw that, you know, energy towards us and expand it outward at the same time. And that comes through alchemy, through vibration. Words are vibration. So a lot of this legal stuff for people that are in really just trying to understand what's going on with the world, and they're diving into this law stuff. I see a lot of people mentioning common law. They're mentioning equity, you know, and things like that. These are all forms of law structures that I've studied and been through. It's really about the language, because one of these agencies or agents or judges or attorneys or whomever, they can run circles around you of what they're saying and getting you to agree to because you don't understand the language. So when we read a legal document from the government, whether it's an IRS form, doesn't matter what it is, we look at it and we think, oh, there's some stuff on here that sounds like words I've heard my whole life, but I don't really know what they're saying, but I'm supposed to sign it, so I'm just going to sign it. You know, but once you start studying the legal language and the spells, man, the spelling of the spells, you can really see, oh, I see what they're trying to lock me into here. And now I know from my use of the language and understanding of the language how to counter that spell. So great point, man. I that's one of the things I really try to get people onto is just study the language. Get yourself a law dictionary. Go online and use the online law dictionary. Like, just cross-reference these words because they're so important. You know, people say, well, fight for my rights. They don't even realize nobody has rights. All your rights have been turned into privileges. And again, so understanding the words helps me understand, how did that happen? Well, I go back to contract and things like that, and I start to realize, well, wait a minute, you know, we've contracted our rights away for protection.
So yeah, let's just clarify that point, because it sounds important. All your rights have been turned into privileges. What does that mean exactly?
So you're born with rights, okay? Everyone is born with every single right they could possibly imagine. All right, rights come from God. They come from the universe. They come from inheriting what is natural. They don't come from a constitution. They don't come from a government policy. So the minute you're born, your parents take you and they register you, right? And they take that name and they register that name. From that point forward, you've given up all your rights for privileges. So from the minute you're born, your rights are given away for privileges. Now, because you've joined a society under a constitution that dictates to you what rights that society is going to recognize. Well, that's essentially a privilege that those rights are being recognized, right? But that's it. That's the only rights that are recognized or upheld. What about all the other rights that I have, right? They don't stop at the first 10 amendments. I mean, I've got tons of rights. So from that point forward, you're only afforded that which the system will recognize and allow you to have underneath that name, address, birth date, all the identifying information that organization has about you. So again, it becomes more of a privilege than a right. Now people say, we have civil rights. Well, civil rights were never meant for me and you. They were meant for federal citizens only. And when you do the research and you go, well, what's a federal citizen? Well, it's not a state citizen, not in the United States of America. There are two citizenships here. And just read the 14th Amendment. It tells you that. It says you can be a federal citizen and a citizen of the state wherein you reside. So you could be a United States citizen and a citizen of the state wherein you reside. Now, if you look at the Government Printing Office Style Manual, okay, for those of you watching, GPO Style Manual, Section 5.23. Okay, Government Printing Office Style Manual, when you scroll down to Section 5.23, Chapter 5, it will say nationalities. Okay, nationalities. What does that mean? That means there's a nation here, nationality. You're from a nation. And under that heading, it says Alabaman, Alaskan, Arizonan, Californian, Texan. So if these are nationalities, why am I not saying I'm a New Jerseyan because I was born in New Jersey? Why am I saying I'm a U.S. citizen? Because U.S. citizen only belongs in the 10-mile square, the federal enclaves and things like that, the territories. And that's easy to read right in the Constitutional Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Okay, that's the territorial legislative district. So
Let me
words are
can
super
I
important.
jump in here really quick, because
Yeah.
one aim I have for this conversation is, because we're already talking about different codes and places where people can go and look up. When I started doing the research for this interview, it's a lot to remember and a lot that you probably have to encounter several times. So I'd like to
Absolutely.
as much as we can have a like a simple framework and sort of understand the basics. And one of the basics that you mentioned was, when we are born, your parents register you, and that's when things change. So could you talk about, because ultimately my objective for this conversation is for people that want to be free. Let's give them some information and practical things they can do. So what's
Awesome.
happening here? What are we stuck in that we don't even know about?
Well, first off, I want to thank you for keeping this framework, because it's so second nature to me that yes, I will go on and on and on. So don't hesitate to cut me off and say, all right, let's bring it back in, because I will go on these topics. So thank you. So yes, what happens at birth? We have to consent to be in a society. You have to, especially here, right? You have to consent. You don't even have that option. When you're born, all of a sudden you're registering your name, your address, your mother's address, the time of birth, the date of birth, this identifying information. Once they do that, you're now a quote unquote state citizen. Your birth certificate doesn't say United States on it. It says state of, right? Once they do that, that name, your name, it is held by them. That's a trust relationship. If I'm giving my property, my name is property, okay, which it is. Just about everything is property, whether it's tangible or intangible, real or incorporeal. So we give that property over. The state says, okay, we're going to take this name, and we're going to hold it in trust, and we're going to create another organization over here. The United States now, the federal government's going to create another organization, a trust, another trust, and they're going to put your name as the name of the trust. That's called Social Security, right? If you look on your Social Security card, whose name is it? Well, you say it's my name. It's not your name. It's the name of a trust. Okay. That trust is a Social Security trust. That is, just read the Social Security Act. It's clear. There's trustees. It's a trust. You receive benefits. Anytime you're receiving a benefit, that is a trust relationship for the most part. Okay. So it's really important that we have to understand, when government does something to us, that they send us a letter, or they do this, or they do that, or they drag us into a courtroom, it's not us that they're dragging into the courtroom. It's our organization that was created. It's the trust with that name. And the way they identify the trust is all the information that your parents gave them at birth is how the trust is identified. So in other words, what do they always ask for? Name, birth date, address, right? These are very significant points of information, not because it identifies you. I tell people, think about it this way. Who gave the government the information to identify you? You did. Okay. So if I show up somewhere and they go, identify yourself, and I go, well, my name's Robert Michael, I got hazel eyes, 6 foot, brown hair, that's my ID. What do I need an ID for? Wait a minute. So you mean to tell me you need to take that same information that I gave to the government, and then they gave it back to me, and now you want me to give it to you, and that's legal. But for me to just tell you it's not legal. How does that work? Right? Because of the contractual relationship and who they want you to be, so that they have jurisdiction over everything you do, because it's not you that they have the jurisdiction over, it is the organization. As a man or a woman, you could stand up and say, you don't have jurisdiction over me. I'm a man or a woman, and all your statutes and codes are specific to what they attach to, or statutes and codes are spelled out specifically what they mean. Well, you use the word person. Let's get our law dictionary out, look up person, right? Person is a corporation, an LLC, a trust, a natural person, but it's never a man or a woman, ever. It's a persona and a personam that you wear, right? That's why you can show up in court in personam, which is in personam is Latin for in person. You're wearing a mask. You're playing a play. You're in an act in Shakespeare. That's exactly what's going on. So it's really important that we understand at birth that we've given everything over to the state, and the state is now holding it in a fiduciary responsibility. Okay, meaning that their trustees, they're not supposed to be benefiting from our estate, our property that we gave them. But when they rearrange everything and we don't understand the arrangement, we think that we have to follow everything they say and do with these quote unquote laws, which are codes and statutes. But in actuality, those codes and statutes only apply to a person. Well, a trust is a person. So if they create a person with your identity, that person is under those laws and codes and statutes. The difference is when you step up and they say, John Henry Doe, yeah, that's me. They go, oh, we got the trust here. We've got somebody that's saying that they have a right to operate this federal trust. We're even this state trust, but they don't have a right to do that. We don't know who they are. What's your identification? Where's your ID? Oh, it's right here. So you give them the ID of the trust, but you don't have a right to administrate that. So you're breaking the law every time you use your name.
So then we've got these two. You've got the man with your name, and we've got a trust with your name.
The straw man. Yep.
The straw man, and these two different things. So why does this exist?
It exists because the government cannot control you as a man. It exists because the government is broke, and in order for them to get any money, they have to have debtors to mortgage over to the bank to get money from. Okay, so in 1930, when the bankruptcy hit, and they started to, Roosevelt came in and he issued the Emergency Banking Relief Act on March 9th, 1933. They basically didn't have any money left. They didn't have any gold left to give the Federal Reserve owners. Now, remember, the Federal Reserve started in 1913. Mm-hmm. Okay. So from my understanding and what I've researched, the way that it worked was we're going to give you your money supply. Now, remember, dollar bills used to say on them that they were redeemable, okay, for gold or silver at your nearest Federal Reserve branch. Right. They don't say that anymore. They just say they're legal tender, right? For all debts, public and private. It used to say legal tender for all debts, public and private, redeemable in gold or whatever the case, redeemable in lawful money at the nearest Federal Reserve. They took that off of there after 1930 or 1933. Still, let me back up. So it's my understanding what happened was they said, yeah, we'll print these nice little scripts for you, these promissory notes, which a note in banking law, again, get your definitions out. Read what a legal note is. It's a promise to pay. It's an obligation. It's not money. It's a debt. So they give us these nice little debt notes, a 5, a 10, a 1. Woo, look at this. United States money, right? And they say, look, United States, for us doing this, since we're a private organization, a trust, we're going to charge you 6%, whatever the percentage is. I'm just throwing numbers out. These aren't accurate, but this is the theory of how it went. So when you get compound interest and they're charging you 6%, they want to be paid in real money. They don't want to be paid in more debt notes. The bank wants to be paid in money of substance, gold and silver. So the United States goes, oh, we got some gold over here in Fort Knox or wherever they purport that this alleged gold is that we have, which we don't have. And they start paying off the bank for issuing these notes and controlling the money supply. Well, come 1930, we're broke. We don't have any more money, right? So, we better design this emergency, crash the system, reorganize the wealth because these guys are broke. This is the third bankruptcy, reorganization. So they crash everything, right? They reorganize the wealth. Everybody thinks it has to do with the stock market, right? Because, of course, that's where everything goes down. Same thing they're doing now. It's really no different with the pandemic. They're just keeping you, distracted while they reorganize this entire money structure. So what they did was they mortgaged off all the people's labor. So to answer your question, the reason they set this up was they need to be able to create debtors so that they can go to the bank and get loans. Because in order for a bankrupt organization to get a loan, it's got to put up something for collateral. Just like when you go to get a car or a house, you have to put the car up, or you have to put the house up, something as collateral. Well, the United States didn't have any money, so they couldn't put anything up for collateral. But what they had was national parks that they all of a sudden took control of, land and people. So they could mortgage off our land and our souls, our wealth, our labor. Well, to legally do that, everything has to be consensual. So we're going to set up an insurance account called Social Security. All right. So now there's another player involved. There's a Social Security insurance aspect to this. And through that insurance account, the Treasury can now invest and intermingle funds. Okay. And it can create money by going to the bank and saying, look, another one was popped out of someone's womb today. Here's another debtor. We got the certificate right here. Here's another debtor. Give us more money. Oh, okay. Here's more credit.
Just to be clear, you said something like they're mortgaging your labor. So the collateral is how you're going to work and pay taxes, or what is the collateral specifically?
The collateral is your energy, right? How you're going, just like you said, how you're going to work for the rest of your life. That's the collateral. And all of your property, right? So whatever property, I shouldn't say your property. Remember, they created this thing.
The trust property.
Yeah, everything gets attached to that, right? You got to have Social Security. What's your Social Security number? What's your Social Security number? What's your Social Security number? All your property gets attached to that trust. So they're controlling the trust. So they own it all. Okay. And they can easily say, look, we got a debtor here. We got another. Everyone in this country is a debtor. Every single person that is, I shouldn't say that, everyone's trust is a debtor. Everyone that is using that name and that Social Security account, that's a debtor. Okay.
And so now, this is the system when people talk about the debt slavery system, this is what they're talking about. Is that right?
This is what I'm talking about. Yeah. I don't like, and I say that in a way because I've heard so many people explain it over the years that confused the heck out of me. And once I really started picking apart all the different aspects and studying trust law and bailments and all that stuff, I started to realize, oh, this is how it's working. So for me, yes, this is what I mean when I talk about the debt slavery system. Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
And just to make a point on that before we move on, if you read trust law, okay, when a trust has a debtor in possession, in other words, when a trust has a mortgage note, right? Because that's a debt obligation. A note, again, is a promise to pay. So when a trust, like a bank, right? Like, Alpine Bank and Trust, I don't know, call it something, whatever, Bank and Trust, now has your mortgage note, they have an asset. So a debtor in a trust is an asset, okay? So think about it. If the United States is a trust, which it is, not a corporation like everybody says, which is what they want you to believe because that gives them a shield. So stop giving them a shield. That's what I keep telling people. They're not a corporation. Stop giving them a shield. They function like a corporation. They've called themselves a corporation, but they are technically not a corporation. They are a trust, and they have tons of debtors in their trust. And that's how they continue to go. And they're using your wealth and my wealth to fund these wars, to fund their COVID mandates, to fund everything. They can't do it without us.
And I think a misconception is that when we pay taxes, it's funding the government.
Sure.
But it sounds like what you're saying is that it's the money from the bank that's funding the government and the war and stuff like that.
Well, it's the money from our signatures, yes. And then they're reinvesting. What they're doing is our signature is authorizing securitized transactions, right? Be it a traffic ticket, whatever. They're bundling those up. They're able to invest those. So yes, essentially it's our signature that is creating the funding for all this stuff. Okay, it's us. We are the creditors. The bank does the transfer, the shell game, and says, oh, we're the creditors, but you're not the creditor. We're the creditor. And you're running that through our federal trust account, which, now we're getting into securities fraud. All right. So yeah, essentially your hypothesis is correct.
All right. This is already starting to get a little confusing for me. So I imagine maybe for the listeners. Let's just go over again what we've established so far. This is this wasn't, so it sounds like it wasn't in the beginning of the United States
Right.
Constitution Declaration. It sounds like that this stuff wasn't in place then. It was in 1913 when all this came into existence. Is that right?
Yeah, when it started to come about. Yeah.
Because they
So,
needed to essentially raise money.
well, they didn't. Yeah, they didn't have any money. So let's back up with that. And maybe this will help clarify too. So in Jewish law, okay, which banking is all Jewish law. Okay. Um, People are forgiven for their debts after 7 years. Okay. In bankruptcy, right? You're bankrupt, you're forgiven after 7 years. In Jewish law, countries are 70 years. Okay. So times that by 10 for countries. So do the math. Okay. We had this war that we called the War of Independence, right? The Revolutionary War, all smoke and mirrors, by the way. We couldn't fight that war with muskets and pitchforks and, a couple of farmers. We needed help because England was the largest military machine on earth, most sophisticated. So you're not going to beat it with a couple ragtag, rednecks, right? So we hired France. Just read history. This is very simple stuff to track. So we hired France. Well, how did we hire France? We didn't have any money. Now we're in debt, right? So you're in debt. So you declare your independence. You have the war. You don't have any money. You go into the Articles of Confederation. You all bind together and say, we are separate nation states and we're binding together in a confederacy. Okay. The Northwest Ordinance comes in. That's another part of this, but that's one of the bylaws. We'll table that. That's where the United States first started to take shape, was the Northwest Ordinance, which a lot of people don't even think about. Okay. Then you get into, well, we have no money. So we need to function somehow. This is bankruptcy. So what happens in a bankruptcy? Everything gets held in trust, right? Until the bankruptcy can be settled and the debts can be paid and all that stuff, equitably. So here we are writing a bankruptcy trust called the Constitution. That's all it is. This is bankruptcy trust, man. It's a trust. No matter which way you shake it down, it has all the elements of a trust, which aren't many. You don't need many to form a trust. So now we're at 1789, 1790 is when the first congressional sessions begin, right? President sworn in 1790, whatever. Now we're in bankruptcy. We're functioning, we're going along. The bank tries to come in the early 1800s and create another central banking system. People are still in tune to central banking scam, and they're like, nope, we're not having it, get out. Andrew Jackson said, I killed the bank, because he's like, we're not having a central bank system. Get out of our country, you vipers, the den of vipers. Just read about Andrew Jackson. So 70 years later is what? When are we going to be forgiven for this bankruptcy? In 70 years, 1860. All of a sudden, oh, God, got another war, Civil War. You guys just happen to be fighting each other over slavery, which wasn't how the war started. It had nothing to do with slavery. It had to do with states' rights. And the state said, no, the federal government is not going to come in and tell us to give more money to the southern or to the northern states because they're not making as much money as we are. We're not going to do that. It had nothing to do with slavery at all. Nothing. The Civil War had nothing to do with slavery. Slavery, just as a side note, was used just like Lincoln said in the Emancipation Proclamation. Just read it. As a fit and necessary war measure. That's why the slaves were freed, as a fit and necessary war measure, meaning if we free the slaves in the South, they're going to rise up on the plantations where the husbands are fighting the war. So the mother and children are left on the plantations, and these slaves are going to rise up and kill the mothers and children. What are the military going to do? They're going to leave the battlefield, go, hell with you, man. We got to get home. They're going to kill our family because the slaves are free now. And that's exactly what happened. That's how they started to turn, because they were losing up until the Emancipation Proclamation. The North was losing. Okay. After that, they started winning. Put that aside. Back to the 70 years. Bankruptcy reorganization. You guys are now bankrupt. You got to pay for this war. You got to free the slaves. You got to do all this stuff other than pay attention to the bankruptcy. All right. Fine, we get through that. They take away more freedoms, right? Everybody's, yeah, take away our freedom, just end this hellacious war that just popped up out of nowhere. 70 years after that, what date is it when we're about to be forgiven? Just happens to be 1930. Oh, stock market crash, guys, you got no money. What are you going to do? Sorry, can't be forgiven of the debt. We got to put you in more debt. What are you going to give us for collateral? Right? We're going to give you the people, and we're going to give you the labor and the land. 70 years after 1930.
So the bank, what bank here is holding so if we're bankrupt against a bank, is there a specific bank that we're like repeatedly bankrupt to?
The same bank that's in every country, the Federal Reserve. Now, they may have different names in other countries, but the owners of the trust are the same, right? You got your Rothschilds, your Morgans and stuff like that, the elite wealthy, the Vatican, they all have a hand in the pot. And these central banking systems, you'll never know who the true owners are because the owners are the beneficiaries. The owners, it's a trust. And you don't have a right to see the trust. This is a private organization. It may have a public side that has to follow certain public policies and all, but its profits and everything are private. You don't have a right to see that. That's why after the 14th Amendment or after the Civil War, what did they put in the 14th Amendment? The public debt shall not be questioned ever. Well, folks, you can question the public debt all you want. They don't have to verify anything for you. And you agreed to it by being a U.S. citizen under the 14th Amendment. So real quick, I want to finish up the 70 years because 70 years from 1930, everybody, is what? 2000. Give it 1 year. 9/11. Oh, you can't be out of bankrupt. They were reorganizing the bankrupts. They were getting ready to announce that we are out of debt. Okay. And all of that information was held in Building 7, which is why Building 7 just fell. Right? It's like, for those that believe 9/11 is a conspiracy theory, come on, guys. Building 7 is just sitting there, right? Way smaller than these other buildings. Nothing hit it, but yet it just goes boop. And it doesn't do this, by the way. It does this. That's a controlled demolition. So 70 years after 1930, yes, 9/11 happened, put us in another war.
So we were out of debt at that point? We had paid off our debts?
We would have been.
Okay.
We would have been, but we weren't, or we aren't, because all of a sudden, now we're in another debt situation with the war on terror, right? You got to pay for that. Where we're at right now is the creditors, which, by the way, yes, does include China. Like I was saying, there are owners of these central banks. There are creditors, China being one of them, wants their money back. They want their collateral. We don't have the money, so they want their collateral. So what are they trying to collect on? The people and the land. That's what they're trying to collect on. That's where this gets really serious. It's all about finance. It has nothing to do with a virus other than keeping you occupied.
Okay, so how do you collect people?
Well, you don't. You do with them what you want because they're your property at this point, or their property is, because it's not even. Let's back that up. We see it as people, right? They see it as you're the insurance policy for the person that they have a right to collect, right? The person is the trust. It's the
trust, right?
The straw man, that kind of thing, right? So you're attached to that by way of saying, I'm the surety. I will pay the debts of this trust. I will pay the debts of this organization. Oh, well, then you must be the responsible party. And that's why it's extremely powerful when you walk into a courtroom and they say, please state your name. And you go, name's Robert Michael. That's not the name I have here, right? Because I have a last name. Is that your full name, sir? Sure is. Full name I was given. Because I was given that name. My last name was not given to me. That was inherited. That's called a house name. And all of a sudden, the judge is going to start, what's your address? He might start some other questions, or he might go, yeah, okay, whatever, sovereign citizen, okay, whatever. Then you have to know how to keep going with it, right? Because it's not enough to just say you're not the person. But anyway, that's why, because they can only bring the trust in there. And they're just looking for surety for are you going to step up as surety for this trust here today? John Henry Doe? Well, I'm not John Henry Doe, so no, I'm not. I'm not going to step up as surety. But I'd be glad to accept your offer. based on the condition of blah, 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 blah. As long as you meet these conditions, as long as the state over here meets these conditions, I will gladly accept that offer. Now you're just negotiating. Now every single court case becomes a matter of business. It has nothing to do with crime charge. We've got 80 to 90% of the prisoners in this country are there for victimless crimes. And it's all about money. All about money. Prisons are privately owned and they must be kept full. That's part of the contract.
Yeah, I learned about the whole prison thing is being private, and that you can lobby to have laws changed to get more people in prison. It's like lobbying to have your hotel full.
Yep, exactly, man. Good point. You're exactly right. From my research, that's right. Anyway.
Okay, so we're in a situation now here, 2021, where people are trying to collect the collateral. The banks are trying to collect collateral because they no longer want dollars, or what?
Well, we defaulted on the debt, right? Or not we, but the United States defaulted on the debt.
Okay.
On the obligation.
So we're no longer paying, because we're paying. That's what the interest on the debt clock is all about. We were paying the interest, but now we're not able to. Is that what's happening?
Well, we were creating that public debt. Here's the thing. If you were to step up and take back the trust, the interest in the trust property, which are the securities and stuff and all the debt instruments, if you were to take that back and then write them an instrument from your creditor status, not from your debtor status, you would be paying, that debt would disappear every night. If every one of us stepped up and we took our certificate of security, which is a birth certificate, right? Our certificate of title, in a beneficial title in that organization, and we turn that into a negotiable instrument. And we were to say, I'm assigning this to the United States, pay to the order of United States Treasury, $5 million, or for the sum of $5 million, blah, 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 sign it and hand it to them. If every single one of us were to do that, not even, it wouldn't even take every single one of us. We could probably do it with 2,000 people or less. That debt would disappear overnight. It would go away, because we're the creditors. And we know this because I've got a guy that's a close friend of mine. He got himself and 7 other guys out of federal prison. Okay. And you know how he did it? He assigned them a bond for each one of them. And you know, all 7 of those guys had federal felonies. And they all have, well, not all, but those who wanted, once they issued these bonds and wiped out their charges, they were able to get handguns, hands down. They have no criminal record on file. You can't find it in the FBI records, the NCIC records, nothing. Okay, because they issued the bonds. And when they did that, they brought the debt down. Because there's double entry booking, okay, for double entry accounting. Okay. When we see the public debt, we only see this side of the entry. We don't see the other side.
So that's like, for every debt, there's a corresponding asset.
There has to be, because you have to balance the books. The asset is us, right? Just like I said, we're the collateral, we're the asset. The asset is our promise when we were registered at birth to take on the debt of the United States. Because if you go to the Treasury website, I don't know if it's still up there, but you know, when it gives you its informational stuff, it says, well, Federal Reserve notes are obligations of the United States. Did it say Federal Reserve notes are obligations of the citizens? No. Did it say Federal Reserve notes are obligations of you and me? No. That means that the United States is in debt. So how are they going to pass that debt to you and me legally? And that's through the birth registration mechanism, through the accounts. And now you're not allowed to question that public debt. So you can't see the other side of the ledger. You can only see the public side.
Gotcha. So we know there's an asset equal to, so what's the debt clock is like 30 trillion or something, right?
Yeah, something like that. It's astronomical. Of course.
So theoretically, each man has access to, or there's an asset, there's 30 trillion in assets that like
Can be
you would
used. Yes, can be used to discharge. You're on the right track. Absolutely. You're tracking. Yep.
Okay. All right,
Now
cool.
I can explain that part too, as to, right? Because people are like, well, what do you mean there's all this money? Because you're a beneficiary of that trust, right? Okay, so let's go back to birth again. The initial deposit is of the child, of the promise that you're going to take this debt on, that you're going to become part of this society. That initial promise is the asset. Now, if you read the Securities Act of, I think it was 1934, 35, where they started doing all this, okay? A security to be registered has to be registered in triplicate form, meaning if I have a contract between you and I loaned you some money and you said, okay, well, if I don't pay this money, I'll give you this bookcase behind me. Okay, great. Well, that now we have a security agreement because you secured the debt with the bookcase. That's all a security agreement is. That's all securities are. So when you hear somebody talking about securities, they're just talking about debt contracts. That's all it is. It's just debt contracts. There's no money in it. It's just debt contracts. So the same thing happened at birth. Okay, you gave over this promise, this yes, I'm going to take on the debt for you. So your organization, the straw man, whatever, is now the debtor, and you have a certificate for that. Those forms, that registration of birth form, you will never see again in your life. Okay, they say they destroy them, but that's the one with the footprints on it that you'll never see. Okay, triplicate form. Somebody gave me a birth certificate from the 60s and said, here's my original birth certificate, and they were adopted. And on the bottom, it said, if you need to make changes to this registration form, it needs to be done in triplicate. Okay, because the original registration form is the security agreement. In my observation, in my studies, in my application, the original registration is the security certificate, or the registration that could be, let me back up, the security that could be registered, right? Because it's in triplicate form. To be registered with the SEC and all these other trading platforms, it has to be in triplicate form. Now, there are buyers and traders of securities, just read securities protocol, that don't need to jump through certain hoops to become securities traders because they trade in excess of 100 million. So they're not held to the same standards that a trader such as you and I would be held to if we're opening up some sort of investment firm where we're going to be trading stocks and stuff for people. They don't have to do that because they're trading in over 100 million. Now, that says to me, that's some pretty big players right there. And they don't have to show the portfolios and all. It's almost like a private trade that you and I don't get to see, right? This is how the whole mechanism is being done. So I want to get back to, well, where does this money come from? When you sign a ticket or, tax form or anything like that is a debt instrument, okay, right? You're authorizing that to be turned into some security that could be invested, just like mortgages, how they pool them all together in a big, portfolio and then they trade on it. It's no different. So these courts that we see every day, they're not courts, they're banking intermediaries. They just look up CRIS system, CRIS, Court Registry Investment System. Okay, Court Registry Investment System. Funds are registered with us. Now they make it like, you read it and it's, of course, if there's a bankruptcy or somebody has to place funds, or there's a case against each other, somebody has to place funds. Sure. Very, in your face. But it also allows for these other instruments to be created because of the same language, going back to language, these other instruments can be created as well, which are your tickets. We've even found that certain orders that are entered into the case, they get monetized, okay? And the judges and all, not all of them, not every judge knows, not every prosecutor knows, not everybody knows the scheme, right? Because that's the corrupt part where it's like, oh, well, we'll give you some kickback on that if you just keep quiet, right? So they set up their own trusts, their own foundations, things that aren't tied to their name at all. And these kickbacks go into their accounts. All right. So what I'm getting at is where the money comes from in mine and your account is every credit card receipt you've signed, everything you've ever signed that gets traded on, you have a right to interest in that profit. Whatever they profited off of that, you have a right to the interest. Or I'm sorry, yes, the interest. You have a right to the interest in it. Meaning, I have equitable interest in this property, not legal interest. So you have to understand trust. Trust divides title. What is title, folks? Title is nothing more than a receipt. You can't walk out of Walmart with a TV without a receipt because that's title to, that's ownership. It's title.
Okay.
Now, in a trust situation, you can cut that, which is why they call it a trust indenture, because back in the day, you know, in the medieval times, they used to create the title like this. They would cut it in an indenture. So the only other person, the beneficiary of the trust, you'd have to match the two to see that that they're the true owner. That's where you get indenture from, because it was indented. Okay. Yeah. So they're doing the same thing here. You have a right to the title, the beneficial title, and the interest in those proceeds, in that profit that they're making from these bundled instruments. But you don't have the legal right to administrate any of that. You just have the right to benefit from it. So they're hiding the fact that we have all of this wealth, this interest in all of this wealth that's been stuck in someone else's pocket. They're hiding that. You and I have that. We don't know what our numbers are. We wouldn't know without chasing these particular investments down to find, and they can be chased down. There is people that have done forensic auditing on them. And of course, everybody goes quiet, right? They either go missing, they go quiet, they wind up belly up in a pool, or, you know, or face down in a pool, whatever. But it has been done. It has been traced. Yeah. So we have the right to the interest in that. That's what they're hiding. And when you die and you go through probate and you never bring it up, you don't bring up that you're the real owner or the dead guy's the real owner. Hey, sorry, we get to keep it all because you didn't mention you had anything there. You didn't mention who you were in the relationship of your all capital letter straw man named trust. You didn't mention that. You didn't bring it up. You didn't even tell us that you're the real owner. When I go into a court situation, the first thing I do is lay out who I am and who the trust is that's on your paper as the defendant. Okay, because that's who's on the paper, not me. I lay it out, you know, John Henry Doe, all capital letter name, comma, trust estate, New Jersey Vital Statistics file number 129, address, New Jersey Vital Statistics address, you know, whatever identifying information I can identify that trust with, that's how I write it. And I say, I'm here on behalf of that person, because it is a person.
Gotcha. And so you're there to help the straw man make decisions in its case.
Yes. However, there's a caveat to that, because you in a trust situation, a beneficiary can't make decisions for the trust. Okay, cannot do that. So I have to be careful as to how I'm administrating it, because what they're doing is they're actually, when you go into court, you're acting like the trustee, but that's illegal because you don't hold that other half of the title. You only have the equitable title as a beneficiary, and the beneficiary has two primary rights: a full accounting and performance by the trustee. Well, if you're the trustee and you're in there trying to administrate this thing, it's not your trust. You didn't set it up. You don't have legal title to it. So what I do is I take another position, an executor, because an executor, like a CEO, is the one that oversees all the property in the entire estate. But if there's a trust, the CEO doesn't operate the trust. The CEO tells the trustees that he needs an accounting and performance, and then says, I'm going to appoint you as the trustee because this trustee isn't doing his job. And since I'm in the executive shoes of the real owner who isn't alive, because it's the name and all, it's not a real thing, I'm standing in the executive position. I can now appoint government officials to administrate the trusts. Now they're subservient to me because I have it's not judicial, in other words. So judicial means that they can run it through all these processes and policies. Oh, we can determine this and that. Ministerial means we can't do that. We have to follow the terms of the trust. So
you have then, as the general executor, you have all the control over what's happening in that trust.
yep, without the liability. So I have the control without the liability, but I don't have the ability to administrate it. I have to appoint them to do that because they're the trustees. And because it's a trust, they can't back out. That's why my Kansas, for those of you that have been to my website, you see my Kansas arresting. That's why I allowed myself to get arrested over a traffic ticket, because I'm showing everyone this. I'm approaching this from a business and trust standpoint. These officers on the side of the road, bless their hearts, they have no clue that they're revenue collection officers for the state trying to access the federal trust with, hello, my name used as its name. And they're trying to get me to break the law by signing a ticket and giving them a security instrument so they can make money. Well, that's against the law. I don't have the right to administrate that name and trust. And I'm sorry, but you keep asking me for the identification of the name and the trust. So I can't give that to you, or I'm breaking federal law. Federal law says I don't have to give you my social security number as identification. It can't be used as identification at all.
So tell me more about your Kansas arrest. That's fairly recent. And what's your objective there?
So basically what happened was, and this was all on the fly, by the way, it's not like I planned to go out and get arrested.
Okay.
We were driving through Kansas on our way to Wichita to go to a seminar. And it was my girlfriend and I, and they, of course, I'm in her car now. I'm driving, traveling, whatever people want to call it. You know, I don't get into all that so much. But all of a sudden, and what's funny is prior to this, we were watching a YouTube of a guy explain how to handle yourself in front of cops and all. And I was telling her, I'm like, I like this guy. He's right. That is how you should handle yourself. Like totally. No more than an hour later, the lights go on and she's like, well, you going to do this? And I'm thinking, oh, well, why not? Right. Well, let's just see what happens. Because normally what I do, because I understand it's a business transaction, I'll just take the ticket and administrate the business transaction on the back end and make the ticket go away. I've already done that several times. I don't go to court for tickets and argue. No, I pay it. You know how I pay it? I accept it for value and I return it for value, which means they can now use it to create a security and make money off of. There's no dollar bills exchange when I pay a ticket. It's just simply a writing on the. So for everybody that wants to know what it is, look up acceptance for value US Legal. US Legal website will tell you what acceptance for value is. It's a commercial transaction. Anyway, so they pull us over, and this is all recorded on the website. You go to the services page once you sign our NDA, and you click on it, you see the drop-down menu. It says Kansas arrest. So now my girlfriend put me to the challenge. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, let's see what these guys do. So I know enough that I'm not going to give them any information without counsel. Once I ask him, am I under arrest? And he says, no. And then I say, you know, am I free to go? Well, no. Well, clearly I'm not free to go. You said no. Or even if you don't say no, I can't leave. That's called a custodial arrest. I'm in custody, even though I'm not in handcuffs. Now, the officer doesn't know that. So I'm going to start this whole thing off being about giving them financial information that I don't have a right to give, which includes the name, the address, and the birth date of the organization. Okay, that's what they're going to ask me for. Officer comes up, hi officer, how you doing? And you'll see in the video, he actually wants me to follow him to chase another car. So because he's going to be fair, he says, I'm going to be fair with you. And I'm going to go get that car too. So follow me so I can get them and I'll pull both of you over. I said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that, sir. You know, so I cracked my window down 2 inches. And he's like, well, now since now you're upholding me from getting that person, what's your license and all? I said, well, am I under arrest? He said, no. I said, well, then I can't give you any information without counsel because this is an investigation. And under the Fifth Amendment, I have a right to remain silent and I have a right to counsel. I didn't say that part to him, but I know this. Miranda rights don't need to be read to you for you to assert them, right? Mm-hmm. And there's no such thing as a Miranda right. It's a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, but you can't just sit there mute and not say anything. What you have to say, in my opinion, is, or what I have to say is, I can't give you any information without counsel. Now, this guy's thinking, oh, we got a live one here. You know, he wants to fight us. And we're, you know, and I'm like, no, hey, look, man, calm down. I'm not trying to be an enemy, a belligerent, or I just know my rights. In his mind, he's thinking I'm going constitutional on him. In my mind, I'm going, no, I'm talking about rights of the estate, rights of the trust. I know what you're after. You don't know what you're after. That's the thing. So I'm going to start playing this as a financial transaction, although the language doesn't even say any of that when I'm talking to him. So, he wants to, of course, get my license. So I flashed it to him real quick. I said, I have one. Bam, put it back down. Like, wasn't enough for him to read it, but that's okay. I let him know that I have one. So he goes in. Now more officers show up. Right now they want to, we're going to break the window. I said, well, before you do that, you better call your superior and get them out here, because you guys are on the hook, every single one of you. So you might want to get your superior here, so the superior's on the hook, which you guys are on the hook too. But that was my point. So they call superior out. Superior comes out. Or sorry, they called him on the phone. Now there's 5 cops out there. Superior on the phone. You can hear all this on the video, by the way. My girlfriend recorded everything.
Okay, great.
He's trying to tell me we have a right to pull you over and question you in a Terry stop, Terry versus Ohio. And I said, you don't have a right to any of my information. And I'm thinking, Terry versus Ohio. Well, I'm not familiar with that one, so I'm not going to comment on that too much on the phone. But once I looked it up, when I actually got to the computer later, a few days later, I was like, dude, he's totally wrong. A Terry stop only happens when there's suspicion of a crime. There was no suspicion of a crime. I got pulled over for a traffic infraction. That is not a crime. You can't even label that a crime. And the officer kept going, well, the crime is speeding. That's not a crime. It's an infraction. A crime is when I injured somebody with the intent to injure them. So you mean I drove down the road with the intent to injure a state, which isn't a person, it's not alive, or it's not a man or a woman, so it's not alive. And that's a crime. So anyway, we went round and round. Finally, they had enough. So then the officer admits, you'll hear him admit on the phone, at the very least, the lieutenant or whatever says, at the very least, we need your name, address, and birth date, so we can see if you're not a criminal. And I know what all of that means. You need the organizational information identification, so you can see that I'm not committing a crime by administrating this estate when I'm not supposed to. But he doesn't know that. He's got no clue about that. He's talking about crime, that I actually harm or injure someone in society, right? So there's this duality going on that he doesn't even know.
Okay, what was that like, knowing you were having a different conversation than they thought that they were having?
Fun. It was totally fun. I loved it. I was like, this is great. This is the most exciting thing I've done in a long time. It was fun because I knew there's no way you're going to trap me in anything. Trust me, I'm not worried about getting thrown in jail and fine. No. We're going to take this to a level you guys have never even seen before. And that's exactly what happened. So eventually they called another lieutenant that apparently he was in the middle of dinner, so he wasn't happy. He gets out of the car. He doesn't even, now everyone has a right. Okay. We don't answer questions, guys. You have a right. Not information is voluntary. Stop giving it. Okay. When these officers pull up, they are a municipal corporation. Just look up their Dun & Bradstreet profile, which means they must provide you with a few things before proceeding. Name, badge number, right off the bat. What's your name? What's your badge number? Right. The first questions that I always will ask, because it's pertinent. Am I under arrest? No. Am I free to go? No. Bam. This is an investigation, no information. Fifth Amendment says I don't have to give you any information without counsel because this is an investigation. Okay. This guy shows up, 7th officer involved. I said, hey, officer, what's your slam? He smashes the window. Like, didn't even, just because he was pissed because he had to get up from dinner. Oh, well, so that makes it lawful for you to do. That makes it legal for you to do what you just did, only because you're used to doing that to all the other thousands of sleepwalkers out there. I'm not a sleepwalker. I don't have privileges. I have rights because I've already taken all those back and asserted them, which you guys have no idea that I've already done. They don't know what I've done. So they do this. And then, of course, I'm like, all right, you don't have to wrestle me. I'm getting out of the car. Like, I didn't fight with them. I wasn't mean to them. I wasn't yelling at them. I wasn't talking about, the only rights I talked about was my right to not give information and remain silent. I didn't go into, I have a right to travel. I have a straw man, right? None of that. Because I'm already 2 steps ahead of them. And they don't even know it. So they pull me out of the car. They arrest me. I'm like, here we go, And the funny thing is, once you're in cuffs, they have to read you your Miranda rights, right? Well, they didn't. He gets me in the car, and then he reads me actually, what he did was he illegally searched my wallet before reading me my rights, right? Or not my rights, the rights. And so I'm in the front seat of his car because the dog's in the back, and I'm cuffed, and he's going through my wallet, and he pulls this little thing out. He goes, "Where'd you get this, off the internet?" I said, "Well, actually, no, that's a very valid legal notice that is recorded in the county. And I carry that because when guys like yourself illegally pull it out of my wallet, you have now been legally notified of my status." And he went, "Yeah, I know you don't understand a thing I just said, but just go ahead and put it back in there because you're notified. So you can't get away from it. The public has been notified because it's a public record." What I'm getting at is I created a notice and I recorded it in a county court as general public notice, legal notice. Now that he's holding it, he has actual legal notice because it's in his hand. So he's been notified.
He's been served with it.
He's been served, and he's been notified of the commercial status that he's operating in. So anything he does after that, he's violating just about every right that I ever have, So then he reads me my Miranda rights. I said, "Well, officer, you're a little bit late." Now, none of this is on camera because we're in his car. Anyway, they arrested me. And the first thing I asked them when I got down to the station and they went to book me in, the officer, and these guys were totally kind. I mean, I was kind to them. They were kind. They kept thanking me for being so kind. They were like, "Man, thank you for just being so, nice and not arguing and all this stuff." Not a problem. I'm not here to argue. I'm just here to do business, just like you guys are. Not a big deal. So he starts to book me. I said, "Sir, I appreciate your job. I know what you got to do." I said, "But is this tied to my social security number by any chance? Any of this information?" He goes, well, yeah. I go, "Well, then I can't give it to you." And he goes, "I understand." He goes, just like, "I understand." He goes, "But," real soft-spoken guy, he's like, "But, I can't, I have to charge you. I have to charge you. I have to charge you." That's what he kept saying. And I'm like, he's telling me to my face, I have to charge the account. I have to charge the account. I can't hold you here without charging the account because we need the money. He doesn't even know he's saying that. And I'm like, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And if I'm going to do it, it's under threat and duress because I know I'm not consenting to you accessing that account." It was a very good conversation, kind conversation. I understand. So they put me in the cell. Now they have 48 hours to file charges. They're telling me, "Well, we won't be able to let you go because you didn't give us information. We have to hold you indefinitely." Really? Then why are you guys scrambling at the 44th hour to hurry up and file something? Because if you don't, you have to let me go with no charges or nothing because you can't apply anything to my account. So at the 44th hour, they call me over to the courthouse. "Oh, get him out of the cell, get him over to the courthouse. We've trumped up some charges for him. We can find a law that he broke." Most worst complaint written. I mean, this poor attorney, county attorney, I felt bad for him. He works part-time as a county attorney because there's not even enough crime for him to work full-time. Okay. And his complaint was written so bad when I ran it by my attorney friend, he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is the most horrible work I've seen in a long time." I have done nothing but documented constant violations and exposed the fact that the magistrate, the officers, the prosecutor, they don't even know how to follow constitutional law as it was supposed to be. They have no clue. They don't know how to not violate your rights. They don't. The magistrate kept saying, "Sir, I'm just trying to be respectful of your rights. Sir, I'm just trying to be respectful of your rights." And I'm thinking to myself, dude, you're a magistrate. You work for the state. You shouldn't have to try to be respectful of my rights. You should automatically know how to not violate them. But because I served them a notice, another one that is filed in the county or recorded in the county, my girlfriend, while I was in the brink, meanwhile, now mind you, I'm in the brink and I'm handwriting affidavits. I mean, just got a pencil? Yeah. The guy brings me, "I got a pencil?" Yeah. The undersheriff brings me a stack of blank papers and I'm writing affidavit. I'm writing notices, all handwritten, coming right out of my head because I've done this all these years. Meanwhile, she's on the outside. She goes to the Navajo County Recorder's office, pulls up my record, pulls my affidavit, my declaration of status and power of attorney over the straw man and all. She pulls all that out. She serves it on them, right? So now they're like, what the hell is this? And they're reading it all and they're going, oh, this is way above our pay grade. This is out of our league. Like, this guy knows something that we don't even know. So when it came time for my hearing, the judge was so nervous because I knew so much about things he doesn't even look at, but they're all valid. And he could see in my documents from that are recorded in the county that they're valid, and he's been notified. That he's scared to death. I mean, he's talking to the prosecutor and he's handing him a paper over the bench and he's shaking. Like, he's so nervous because he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how I'm going to react. He doesn't know. So he's like, sir, and I'm just trying to be respectful of your rights. Meanwhile, he violated about 4 or 5 of my rights and didn't even know it. I didn't have to call him out on it. I'm like, we'll save this for later.
So it sounds like, all the police officers and the people in the courts, like, you're saying they just don't know any of this stuff. So, but they're administering it. They're like collecting, they're making charges. They're like creating financial instruments. They're creating money, but they have no idea that they're doing it.
Well, they do know that that's happening. What they don't have any idea of is that it's wrong. Okay, they don't have any idea it's wrong, and they don't have any idea of how it attaches to the trust, because they just think like we do: a name is a name is a name is a name. It's not true. A first, middle, and last name is not a given and surname. It's not, and they will never put your given and surname on anything unless it's important to have that information there for you as the original owner to sign off on. So yes, they know, but they don't know, if that makes sense. And so you have to feel for these people, because morally, if they knew, they would probably have a serious problem with doing it. There are some that do know, and a lot of them
because it's being done to them as well.
Yeah, and a lot of them are alcoholics and stuff, because they have to try to mask this within themselves, that this is their job, that they sell Americans down the river every single day. We've had retired judges that would not look us in the face, but they would have a conversation and look at the ground and be like, well, I can't really tell you, but yeah, this is true and that's true, and don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody we had this conversation. Federal judges, state judges, we've had these guys admit this stuff, but not all of them know. So that's why when I approach something, I go, I'm not fighting these guys. I'm not going in there and attacking them and trying to burn them at the stake and hang them and throw them out of their government position. They're doing exactly what their government tells them they're supposed to do and what their job description is. They are revenue collecting. They are judging you. They're doing all of that, but they're not doing it to you. They're doing it to the account. So I'm not going to hold, or it's not that I'm not going to hold them accountable. What I'm going to do is draw a line in the sand. And I'm going to go, now you know, because I've made you cognizant of the facts. So I'm not fighting you, but once you step over that line of cognizance now and you injure me, now we've got a problem. And I'm coming after your insurance for it. You want to hit these guys hard, go after their bonds. Meaning, draw the line in the sand, find out who the county bonding company is and put an insurance claim on. Hey, they failed at due process. Here's who I am. Here's when they were notified. Here's what they were supposed to do but didn't. So I'm putting in a claim for injury of my rights to the tune of 1.5 million. You guys going to pay that? And you watch, that judge will never work again. That officer will never have an officer job again, because the insurance company, once there's a mark against their insurance, they will fire them immediately. These guys are all just corporate entities that are bonded.
Yeah. So, okay, we've talked about the line in the sand. I think this is probably a good time to maybe talk to the audience about what we should be doing. Because you talked about, you had stuff on record, filed at the county records. Is that what we should be thinking about? Like, what's the benefit of that? Okay. I've heard people saying, like, you have to declare your status. So what should we be thinking about and doing practically here?
Yes. So in short, yes, there should be some sort of declaration recorded, in my opinion. Maybe it doesn't even need to be recorded, but I'm going to now lay out for you why I do what I do and what I suggest others do if it rings true to you. So declaration of status is what a lot of people talk about. However, I don't do just a declaration of status. It's a declaration of status, property, and obligation. So I'm declaring property and obligation as well, because if you read the definition, let's go back to the beginning of the conversation. If you read the definition in Black's Law 7th, it's the only Black's Law edition that you'll find this description in. Scroll down or look for the law of status. Under the law of status, it says one of the 3 departments of civil law. Well, the entire system works on civil law. Now, there's common law and there's equity, but in 1938, I think it was 38, when they blended equity and common law under one form of action, the civil action. That's when they wrote the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. It's all under civil law. So this definition says law of status, one of the 3 departments of civil law: status, property, and obligation. So property and obligation are the other laws: law of property, law of obligation. So when I write my declaration of status, I've written it to cover the property and obligations, the implied property and obligations too. You guys are saying I'm obliged to your debt. No, I'm not. You guys are saying I'm this name. No, I'm not, because a name is property. No, I'm not. You guys are saying I don't have these rights. Rights are property. Rights are property, intangible property. And I got that from an attorney. I was like, you know what? He's right. This guy's right. Rights are property. So I'm declaring all of these things. Now, the other thing I do is you can't just go down to your county and record this document, because statutorily, they don't have that authorization. They're not authorized to do that. But what they can do is they can record a power of attorney, especially when it deals with property. So what I do is I create a power of attorney. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. The power of attorney is from the fictional straw man. I hate that word, but we're just going to use it because it's easy for people to grasp.
Okay.
The fictional straw man is appointing me, the living man, as the power of attorney. And people go, well, how's that possible? It's not alive, right? It's a legal fiction. Well, how's it possible is the same way that Apple does it, or Dunkin' Donuts. How do they do it? How do they appoint an attorney to represent them? An agent, right? An officer, a manager, a CEO, somebody with the authority to appoint a power of attorney on the organization's behalf. No different. You're stepping up, because right now they have you as the agent for it anyway. That's the problem. So what I do with the power of attorney is I act as both the agent and the new power of attorney. So I act as the agent for the straw man. I'm wearing 2 hats. I sign one in one way, and I sign as the other with another signature, okay? Because a signature is not your name. For everybody that wants, look up the law of signature. It's not your name. It's a mark on the page. It's what mark you associate with the name. That's why it could be a squiggle, it could be a circle, it could be a damn smiley face or a middle finger if you want. It does not have to be a name. So what people can do, at least what I do, is I take this power of attorney and I put my declaration of status, property, obligation as an attachment. And then I go down to the local county court and I say, well, I need to file. Well, actually, I call them first, because they have no sense driving over there. I want to know if I'm going to get some resistance. So I call up, I'll check the website. Hey, yeah, I need to record a power of attorney with some attachments. Do you guys, can I record that there? Oh yeah, we can record that. Great. And I can have attachments? Yes, you can have attachments. Perfect. Declaration of status becomes an attachment to the power of attorney. In the power of attorney, I'm taking power of attorney as the general executor. So now I have the power to administrate this thing because I've been appointed properly to do it. Scares the shit out of these guys, okay? Because it is a total legal document that they recognize. Power of attorney is powerful, okay? Declaration of status gets attached. Now, in my declaration of status, I have several exhibits where I trademark all different variations of the name, and then I copyright any works from the name. I give an affidavit of my right to endorsement of any instruments for this name, acquisition of the security that was put on deposit at birth. There's an affidavit that lays all this out. Okay. Then I do a certification of trust. I set up an revocable living trust that takes the interest of the John Henry Doe straw man. Okay. So this is, now I know this is all coming at everybody fast, and this is all on my website. I offer it as one package. You get instructions, videos, the whole thing. If you want to use my template and how I do it, it's under my, it says status documents, and it's there. So what I do is I set up a revocable living trust. That trust takes 10 minutes to fill out, and then you get it notarized. Okay, that's it. Trust is done. Then I fill out my power of attorney declaration of status, because within that, it's talking about that the trust has taken interest in this straw man account through me as the power of attorney. It's all set up and interconnects, and it's complicated. But again, if you just do this and then start really understanding what it is you're doing, you become powerful. Now, I know that's hard for a lot of people, so I'm going to give you pointers on how you can start administrating your own affairs in alignment with this particular document. So what I do, let's finish up the last thing and then we'll move on to that. What I do is I take it to the county, I have them record it. I go pick it up the next day. Now I have and I order a certified copy. So now I have a public record of who I am declared as fact, as under penalty of perjury, okay? Which means I'm not lying in anything I'm saying. And if someone's going to challenge me on it, you better be able to prove it with another affidavit under penalty of perjury under the laws of the United States of America, not the United States, which is a federal rule that I can cite to tell you where it says without the United States. Okay, but anyway, and that's in my document. That's a much more powerful declaration than any of these agents are going to be able to sign, because they're going to be able to sign. They're not going to be able to sign under the laws of the United States of America. They're only going to be able to sign under the laws of the United States. Two different jurisdictions. Okay.
Okay.
Write this down. 28 USC, United States Code, 1746, subsection 1, which is 1 in parentheses. You're going to Google that. That's going to tell you an unsworn declaration and how you swear to it under the laws of the United States. And it will say with right next to it on Cornell law, without the United States. So if I'm swearing under the laws of the United States of America, how is it without the United States if they're the same? They're not the same. They're telling you right in that code, it's not the same. They're not the same jurisdiction. All of my declarations and affidavits are signed that way. Okay. And that's in the packet. Anyway, we get this recorded. Now we have a sworn declaration and we have a certified copy of it. Now, what does that certified copy do for you? Because it's recorded in the court has certified a copy under its full faith and credit, which means that evidence that I now have certified can be admitted into any other court in the country as evidence because it's certified by the court.
Okay.
Okay. So now that's what I call my foundation. What does that do for you? Does that mean as soon as you record it, all of a sudden, you know, the state's going to leave you alone and no COVID mandates for you and you're free? Absolutely not. What it means is you have a solid foundation of evidence to start standing on it, right? You stand on what this thing says and does. You don't, it's not a remedy. It's just a foundation. Very powerful foundation.
Yeah, you said that's powerful, and then so with power, right? What is it that you can do with that power now? What can you, now that you're standing on this foundation, what's possible?
Just what I did in Kansas. Hey guys, I don't think I owe you any information because there's a trust here that you don't know about that I've declared on the public record and laid out all my relationship to you and it. So who are you, right? That now I can challenge them. That's the document that went to the judge, the magistrate, and the prosecutor that put them on the hot seat. And the attorney general. Mm-hmm. So
I think at least one thing that I'm wondering about, and probably a lot of people are wondering about, is is it possible to access, because you talked about the interest that has been earned, like you have the right to access that. Like, one thing that would be great, right, is if we could just get enough money to people that need it. So is there a way here that people can access the money that's been generated?
Yeah, there are ways that people promote online. However, I don't get into that because I've seen people go to prison repeatedly for trying to access that. Okay. Which we will be dealing with. And I don't want to disclose that in the public, but is it possible? Yes. So one of the things I did with this packet of information when I served the Attorney General of Kansas, I issued a birth certificate with it. Okay. So, oh, and here's another thing people can do. Get copies of either your certificate. Well, I keep my certificate of live birth, which is not the birth certificate. It's different. Right. The certificate of live birth is the one that has the hospital name, the hospital address, you know, everything, all the other details on it. The birth certificate is just plain mom and dad's name, maybe the hospital name, but not address, things like that. Some states won't give a certificate of live birth, but let's just go back to the birth certificate. The birth certificate, which is the one with less information, to me, from my studies, is nothing more than a certificate of title to that wealth, right? So I took that certificate, and I always keep about 10 of them on hand. Okay, I've got a stack.
It's like your checkbook, right?
Yeah, because they're instruments. They are financial instruments. They are titles. They are money. So I assign that, which is part of the packet, that I have the right to assign the interest over to the state so that they can discharge all the charges. So in a way, I'm accessing that account without trying to pull money out of it. And that's where people go wrong. They think they're going to get physical cash. Well, the minute you do, now you've broken the law, you go to prison. I just use it as a transaction account. Well, here, take care of the charges, create more money for yourselves. Go ahead, yeah, knock it out, and bring down the public debt while you're at it. Thank you, you're welcome. Right? I just brought your public debt down. You're welcome. You know, so now they're really in a tough position because the charges are already paid. The declaration is solid, who I am in relation to everything. Everybody's been served. Now they're going, because now I have the right to go after their insurance company and their bonding and a ton of other things. That's why it's powerful. In terms of accessing these accounts to regain our wealth back, that's a whole other conversation, and one that needs to be held in private, like serious private, because if you put that out in the public, you're in the public realm. They have a right to come shut you up, and I don't need that. Do I have access, and am I pulling cash out? No, I'm not. It's just so everybody's clear on that. I'm not, and I don't want to yet.
Okay, interesting. Okay, what about the taxes? Because I've encountered in preparing that some people have successfully said, don't want to pay taxes anymore, or it's a voluntary thing to participate in that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, but real quick, if I can, because I want to give people some more action items, because I know that that's really intricate action items, but signing your name is so important, guys, on everything. I mean, everything. Because if you look at the name that the document you're signing is addressed to, it's not your name. Okay. Your name in the system is spelled last name, upper and lower. Well, I'm going to call it a family name or a surname or a house name. Okay. Surname, upper and lower case, comma, first, middle, okay, upper and lowercase. If any of that is spelled in all uppercase, even though it's last, comma, first, and middle, it's not you. If it's spelled, like you normally see it, first, middle, surname, upper and lowercase, it's not you. If it's spelled uppercase at all, if it has an initial in your middle, not you. None of those are your name in the system. What I'm getting at is if you have a document, I don't care what it is, credit card receipt, whatever, and it's spelled any of those ways it's your name, you want to be signing. I shouldn't say you want to, I can't give you advice. I want to sign as the executor, the agent. So the first thing we do, by, the word by, B-Y, colon. Now, why do we do that? If you've ever looked at corporate paperwork where the CEO signs off on something, he signs it by, colon, agent for the organization. Same thing. By, colon, signature. Now, to me, it's not enough to just have a signature without letting them know which agent you actually are. So I have a signature, comma, and then I write the word executor after it, because that's who I am. I'm exonerated from all claims against the estate. I'm just the agent with no personal liability. There's two other things to add to this signature, depending on what it is you're signing. If I'm signing something for a bank, a utility company, something like that, any contractual signature, right? Which if you guys really start reading what you're signing, everything's a contract, just about.
Mm-hmm.
Above that signature, I write without prejudice. Okay, so by colon signature, comma, executor without prejudice. What that's doing is reserving all my common law rights under the contract. You can read, you can Google UCC, Uniform Commercial Code 1-308. And that is commercial regulation for any contracts that are formed in this entire country, no matter what you're doing, even if it's with the dog groomer, it doesn't matter. It dictates the law on contracts. And it says under 1-308, if you write the words without prejudice, without or under protest, or all rights reserved, without recourse, those types of words, then you have reserved all of your common law rights under the contract. So it's really important. So without prejudice above the name. Now there's one more piece to this. Okay. Now this doesn't have to be on everything. If you have by, signature, comma, executor on like your credit card receipts and all, fair game. But when you're signing contracts without prejudice, now there's one more caveat. If you're forced to sign your name, as in I've been arrested and they're not letting me out unless I sign this document, the initials before the signature, V.Victor.Chris. Google VC abbreviation in Latin and see what it says. It will tell you it means under duress, under threat, under by force. In other words, I didn't consent to this. You forced me to it because you got a gun on your hip, or you're threatening to throw me in jail. So VC. Signatures are super important. So that's something everyone can do right now today. Just start training yourself. Another thing people can do, stop giving information freely. Your first question should always be, is it voluntary or mandatory that I give you this information? If they say it's mandatory, then you say, please give me the law that makes it mandatory for me to give it to you and you to solicit this information. If they can't do that, you tell them, then you're going to have your legal counsel call me and sorry, I can't give you any information today.
And you don't want to give information because that will
be used against you in a court of law.
Okay. Because always. It's tying you to the straw man.
Well, there's that, but giving information, your private information, is not illegal. Or to not give it. It's not illegal. You give information is voluntary. There's not a single law, and I've read a ton of them, that say you have to give, the citizen must give, or the person must give information. Never, nowhere. It's voluntary. Information is property. It's voluntary. You have to volunteer it. It's super huge. If it's a legal matter with COVID or something, and like an officer comes into the store because you're not wearing a mask, I'm sorry, sir, am I under arrest? No. Am I free to go? No. Okay, well, this is an investigation. Is there a crime being committed? Well, you're not wearing a mask. I didn't ask you that. Is there a crime being committed? Yes or no? What's your name? What's your badge number? You ask the questions, not them. They're the public servant, not you. You ask the questions. Sorry, sir, I'm not trying to cause any trouble. I just know my rights. I know who I am. I'm not like the rest of these people. As you can see, I don't have a mask on. So I just need you to give me the information here because that's what you have to do by law. What law is that? That's not my problem. You need to call your attorney and ask them that. I'm not here to tell you what the law is. I'm here to fulfill it. Remember what Jesus said? I'm not here to destroy the law. I'm here to fulfill it. It's that simple. Fulfill the law, be it. So that's something people can do too. Stop giving information. You don't have to give it.
Okay. Robert Michael says.
Yes. Anyway, right. So the next question was, shoot, where were we going after that? I wanted to give people those pointers and stuff they could do.
Yeah, we got this signature. We got the stop giving information.
Power of attorney, all that stuff.
My context for this conversation is like, we want people to have as much power and freedom and control in their lives as they can. So, if it's, so you already said it's complicated, cumbersome to try to go after the actual money, but but theoretically it's possible. And I was also asking you about taxes and that being voluntary.
Yes. Okay. So scary thing, this big tax thing, right? Well, it's definitely voluntary, and they will tell you it's not. And there will be court cases that will say it's not and all that. The problem I see that people have is once you fill out a tax form, you've made the obligation. You've said, I agree to be a taxpayer. The taxpayer, by definition, is not a man or a woman, right? It's a person, it's a citizen, it's all these things, but it's not a man or a woman. So I agree to be a taxpayer. I've agreed to pay you this amount. Now you are on the hook, and now you can be arrested and levied and all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. If you don't fill out any forms, there's no nexus. There's no nexus to connect you to the obligation. So it is possible. And yes, I've gotten a lot of people the information. I don't want to say I've helped them because I can't give tax advice, right? But I've gotten them the information, and they have successfully stopped paying taxes and are not bothered. We ran an estate from a very well-known, which I won't mention because it's under the attorney-client privilege with my attorney friend, but I was working on this case as his paralegal with him in the estate, and the estate wasn't taxable because this man had already done these procedures. And the IRS had sent him a letter and said, you're free to go, no taxes in 2014. He passes away 2 years ago. Now they're trying to tax his estate. Nope, sorry, you can't do it because the IRS already said he's good to go. I've had people go into their employment, give certain documents. I have templates on my website. Okay, now let's back up.
So for entrepreneurs who are not signing a W-4 or something like that, are they, because they're not signing a form, are they already sort of set up for that?
Yeah. So in my position, people that are working for themselves, in my the way that I see this, are in a much better position because you don't have to deal with the employer who is being threatened by the IRS to get your information. Okay. So yes, it depends on what you're doing. You know, there is such a thing called sales tax and stuff, which is a legal tax and all that's totally legal and all that stuff. So you got to be careful with certain taxes, but income tax, for me, as an entrepreneur, if you will, I don't like to use that word because I'm not in this for money, but as a free man that actually doesn't own anything, it's very important for me to not fill out any forms, to send in what's called a revocation of election under the IRC, the Internal Revenue Code, which is saying I revoke my election to pay the income tax. And the Internal Revenue Code says that revocation starts from the year that I turn the form in, not backwards. So once I turn that in, and the IRS, they will recognize that and send a stamped copy back to you and say, yes, we've received it. All right, that's on my website, the template, it's all there, instructions, how to do it, all that stuff. From that point forward, I have to be careful of, let me back up. Employers, people with employers can give an affidavit in lieu of a W-4 and a W-9. We have had plenty of employers that have run it to the IRS, and the IRS said, you're good. No taxes are to be withheld from their check. Okay. We have had other employers say, well, sorry, we can't do that because the IRS is going to come after us, even though we have others where the IRS confirmed it. So if you work for someone, it's a lot harder because the employer is afraid. Right. Not that it's illegal. It's just the employer is afraid. They don't know what to do. They've never seen anything like it. That's offered on the site as part of the package of templates. Anyhow, for an entrepreneur, someone that works for themselves, you got to be careful how you operate after that. We don't get involved with the IRS. Our accounts that we may be using may be a trust account. Maybe it's a 508c1a church account. Maybe it's a corporation account that we're not a shareholder of. Okay. It's how you set yourself up and the structure to make sure that you're not illegally evading taxes. Tax avoidance is legal. Tax evasion is illegal.
Okay.
It is totally. So tax avoidance is perfectly legal. So it's just how the loopholes, if you will. And the key to the loopholes is privacy, not contracting. Be careful what you sign. How are your accounts set up? I don't have an account in my name. Well, technically it's not my name anyway. In the name, I don't have an account set up. So I don't have any liability. If you do have an account set up, I shouldn't say it. Let me retract that. If I do have an account set up, because I can't give you advice, I would get rid of any savings accounts. And I would also change the checking account to a non-interest bearing account. Because when you're getting interest, just what it says, someone else is taking interest in that account and the money that's in it. Who's taking interest in my account? Who am I giving interest to? Oh, you're getting, 6 cents on the dollar, or whatever the interest is for having your money in there. No, that just means somebody is paying me, which means they have a right to my property now. I just granted them a right of interest in my property. Get rid of that interest. Now they can't just easily come into the account and peek in it whenever they want because they don't have any interest in it. So that's another thing that I do. Never, ever, ever have an interest-bearing account.
Interesting. Man, this is great stuff. This is amazing.
But I do want to say, Derek,
yes.
It's great that we can do all this paperwork stuff, but let's face reality. The ultimate is when they come after you, right? That's why it's important. Well, number one, REM Private Management, used to be REM Private Management. Now we're the House of Marcus Fellowship. We're changing everything into a PMA. That's why we want people to come into the PMA so that we can privately teach you and protect you, because we know you're not going to be able to answer the door when the IRS knocks on it, right? In the right way. It's all about how you respond. So remember, the state can never come after me and you. They can only come after the account. They can only do business with the account. This goes back to my rule of thumb with not giving them information, not giving them a name, and not giving them a signature unless it's restricted with specific endorsements. Because we're starting off on the right foot when they knock on the door, when they send a letter. The first thing we do is, oh boy, I'm in trouble, right?
Yeah.
The emotion starts. That's the fear that controls you, but it doesn't have to be there. The key is when they come after you because you didn't pay the tax or they're alleging you owe a tax, how you respond is extremely important. What name is on the envelope? Not my name. Who's it coming from? IRS, CPS, state tax department. Oh, I'm sorry. No such person at this location. Please forward to the Attorney General. Send it right. Don't even open it because you're not supposed to be receiving that mail. The state is, because the state is the one who houses the trust. It's the way that we defend. It's the way that we respond. That's what's important. I mean, don't get me wrong. You want the paper foundation. That's what it shows the court, the judge, the whomever the authority is going to try to be, that you were notified and you didn't take the matter up at that time. Now you're coming at me with adverse claims to what has already been notified to you is a non-issue. See, so it becomes important to do these steps prior rather than waiting for them to knock on your door for something you did when you didn't properly structure yourself. So
is there anyone that you don't recommend setting this foundation for, or should all Americans do this? I'm also wondering, is it the same around the world? Because we have listeners all over the world.
Yeah, all Americans, definitely around the world. The difference is they can't just go to land records court like we can and record this stuff. However, the declaration is powerful. It doesn't have to be recorded. Their country will have rules on how to notarize things and specific legal documents. Notices are extremely important, and your country will have it laid out how you send a notice. You can just Google it. You guys got attorneys and law offices in your countries. They'll tell you how to do it. Okay. So a lot of the procedural stuff is relative. You just have to fit it to the country you're in. It's not so much about the birth registration as much as it is about that account, that Social Security trust account. The way I look at it is if you have probate in your country and you have a system of some sort of Social Security or social insurance, it's the same animal. So yes, you should be taking steps to protect yourself and also ask the government questions when they come at you. That's how I would do it. you know. There are tweaks in certain countries, of course, and primarily civil law countries and common law countries are relatively the same in terms of the actual theories here. They're relatively all the same. Communist countries, sorry, that's all I can say. You know, sorry. I mean, my heart goes out to them. You know, just that's what they're trying to do here, right? They're trying to turn us into communists, which they technically we've been communists. Shh, don't let anybody know that. But I can.
What do you mean by that?
There is no provision in the Constitution for the president to write law. It's impossible. The legislature has to write the law. So where did the president start writing law? 1860, the second bankruptcy. Lincoln wrote the first executive order, and from there it became the president can now write law. That's a dictator. Mm-hmm. No matter how you shake it down. What was it, Hitler that said, I forget how he said it, but he said the Americans are the best at communism because they hide it. And he was right. He's like, they just hide it. They're excellent at it. They're better than we are because they can keep it hidden. And I was like, wow, that's super incredible and makes sense to me.
I'll have to look that quote up.
I believe it was Hitler. Yeah, search for that. And I'm totally paraphrasing. It's completely wrong, but you'll find it if you search for it. And remember, there's also a quote from, I think it's Von Goethe. I can't remember the actual man's name, but the best slave is the one that thinks he's free.
Yeah. And what feels so powerful for me here is like, we've all sort of consented without knowing it to be part of this system. And it feels just very freeing to sort of understand the structure of what's actually going on and have some sort of power or control of like the direction of our lives within the system.
Yes. It is an unseen cage that we can't see around us. And that's what's important. We have to start seeing where the cage is. Once we see where the cage is, then we've got the keys to unlock it and walk out of it. That's why I quote on our seal for the House of Marcus Fellowship, I quote 4:11, Mark 4:11, because that quote says, you have the keys and those that don't see in parables. Those who have the keys see plainly, but those who don't see in parables. They can't see it. They just see it in these parables. And it doesn't make sense. They see it in a different reality. You have the keys of the kingdom. Those that don't see in parables. It's again paraphrasing, but Mark 4:11.
Man, this is super cool stuff. I don't think we've actually mentioned what your website is, so maybe you could tell that to people. Where can people get in touch with you?
Thank you. It is right now we're morphing it into the House of Marcus Fellowship. The web address right now is privateestatetrust.org, all spelled out. It will be changing to houseofmarcus.org, but both of those will still direct you back. We just haven't initiated the houseofmarcus.org yet, but that's coming in the next week. What you will find when you get there is everything's locked under an NDA. That keeps us in the private realm. Anything outside of private is public, which means they can apply their codes, statutes, rules, and regulations. If it's behind a private veil, they have no business in there. The NDA is not so much for guys like yourself, Derek, or anybody coming to the site. It's for the agents. When the government tries to come into my site and use my stuff against me, they're under a non-disclosure. They can't use it against me. They have to sign that non-disclosure before you get to any other page. So you sign the non-disclosure, now you're in. We're going to create a private membership agreement page where people can join the membership. And we are creating a ton of legal documents for all situations. They're templates for our members only. Has to be. That's what protects us for those people that don't like memberships. I'm sorry, but that's what protects us, you know, so we have to do it.
That reminds me of the, I think it's in Utah. It was like, it's illegal to sell liquor unless you're a private member. So you had to to go out to a bar, you had to join their membership, and then they would let you drink for free with your membership fee or something like that.
Yep, absolutely. Now, if you're not a member, there's still the power of attorney, declaration of status, trust templates. There's a common law trust template. There's the tax templates that I use. There's executor templates that I use. There's revocation of election. Terminating voter registration is super, super important. For those of you that believe voting makes a difference, bless you, you just officially signed up for slavery. Okay, because only a federal citizen can vote, not a state citizen. It's illegal for a state citizen to vote. So you're just admitting your slavery by registering to vote. I'm sorry that's going to hurt a lot of people, but that's the way that it is. 100%. If you truly want to be free, you have to terminate voter registration, hands down.
Because
a lot of people are going to have trouble with that.
Yeah, let's just to clarify, because that is now a contract that you're a.
That's one point. But okay. Yes, you're clarifying. I am a U.S. citizen. You're not a U.S. citizen. A U.S. citizen is a federal citizen under the 14th Amendment, not a state citizen under the 14th Amendment, where we clearly told you your nationality is in the government printing office style manual earlier in this podcast. What you're admitting to is that I am a federal citizen, which was created. Federal citizenship was created for the newly freed slaves because they had no state. They were stateless. So the federal government said, oh, we'll create this citizenship called a U.S. citizenship, right? Not a citizen of the United States, but a U.S. citizen. They're different. This is a play on words.
Okay.
They created that federal citizenship for the slaves because now the slaves went from private slavery into public slavery. Then they tricked everybody to become a U.S. citizen, and you cannot vote unless you're one. Why do you think they push so hard to get people to register to vote? Okay, whenever the government is pushing something hard for you to do, it's to their benefit, not yours. Just remember that.
And so, sorry, when you're registered to vote,
you've given all your rights away for privileges because you're not a state citizen first. You're a U.S. citizen first. You've given
so that changes your citizenship status.
Yep.
By revoking your. Okay, interesting.
That's part of it. Yeah. You're basically, because the first thing they'll do is check their records. Oh, he's registered to vote. U.S. citizen, right? If you're in court, something like that, U.S. citizen registered, only U.S. citizens can be registered. It's that simple.
But so you unregistered to vote, but then you're a state citizen of the United States of America?
United States of America, which is not being operated. It's vacant. Really. I mean, if these guys are acting, if the states are acting in their municipal capacity, which they are, the seats of the republic are vacant. The United States, not being a municipal corporation, they turned Washington, D.C. into a municipal corporation, which is normal, incorporated, just like any city you see or town you drive through that's incorporated. Mm-hmm. Then they extended their jurisdiction into Washington, D.C. Okay, so that the legislature has full exclusive legislative authority over Washington, D.C., but it was never intended for them to have full exclusive legislative authority over the states. So they did it in Washington, D.C. first, and then they expanded their authority into the states by implication, by being U.S. citizens, because a U.S. citizen only belongs in Washington, D.C., the national parks, the military bases, wherever Washington, D.C. or the United States owns. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 tells you where they have exclusive legislation over. Mm-hmm. Only lands purchased by the United States from the state and that the legislature has approved such purchase, then they have jurisdiction there. That's where a voter would reside, but they don't have that. You can go into your state legislative records and see, oh, that federal court building there, was that sold to the federal government? And did that legislature of the state approve that? Well, no, they didn't. Oh, then how's that federal courthouse sitting there applying federal gun laws to state citizens? Very easily. I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm a U.S. citizen. Great. Come on in. Let us apply these gun laws to you. Okay. Can't do it to a state citizen. They have no jurisdiction to do it.
So, this, feels
we've
so.
We've challenged this stuff in court plenty of times, and it's true.
What really gets me here is that, I didn't know, and I don't think anybody really knows when you're registering to vote, what's actually happening. It feels so sneaky and
it's dirty.
It's dirty, yeah.
It's exactly what it is. It's dirty, man. I had to come to these realizations just like everybody else did. I actually had just registered to vote for the first time in my life in 2008, right before I woke up, because I'm like, I want to make a difference. And it wasn't until a year or two later I started seeing this, and I was like, oh my God, you mean tell me I just literally signed myself away even more? Right. So I was just like everybody else. I was no different. I just happened to come onto this information 12, 13 years ago. And now I've taken the steps to make those corrections. Not only taking the steps to make those corrections, but I was able to see how powerful I actually am. I don't back down from any of these guys, judges, police officers. I don't know. I don't fight them. I'm not rude to them. I'm not ignorant. I know my rights. I don't do any of that. I just know how to overcome them and watch them start going, right? They start short circuiting. I don't know what he's talking about. It does not compute. And it's like, next thing, that's what I was doing to the officers. That's what I did to the magistrate and all these people in the Kansas there. It does not compute. They start short circuiting. So anyway, we do have to wrap because I've got another one immediately following this.
Okay, amazing. Man, thank you so much. That was great. That's fantastic. And let me know how I can support you. I want you to succeed in everything you're doing.
Oh, thank you, brother. I love you for that. Love you for being you. And anyone that wants to know more, we are going to start doing seminars that are, of course, private. Once you go through the website, sign the NDA and stuff, we're going to start doing seminars around the country. They're being set up so we can help people understand what this is. And House of Marcus is going to be there to support you. We're not just going to give you some templates and say, don't call us, you're on your own, which a lot of people on the internet are doing. Our thing is, and we do have in-house counsel, okay, legal counsel of 24 years. So we've got some definite support here. And we just hope that we can help as many people as possible to wake up and take their true power back in peace and honor with dignity and respect.
Love it. All right, Robert Michael. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You're welcome, Derek. I'll see you soon, brother.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.